I am an avid supporter of Bernie Sanders. But if you would have come and talked to me back when I was 20, I would have hated Bernie Sanders. I am a Sanders supporter who is also a reformed Republican. And I never called myself a Republican. I always called myself an independent. I never wanted to fully admit that. But the way the beliefs I followed, whether they were ever all that real, were compiled together, it was a Republican standing. I was anti-abortion, anti-gay marriage. It wasn't even really, it wasn't described as marriage equality. It was gay marriage back in like earlier 2000s. I had mixed feelings when the war with Iraq began, but I managed to make myself support it because I wanted to support George Bush so much. I almost had a mental breakdown when people were reporting that John Kerry was going to beat him in 2004. I was a Republican. And how I got from there to here is really just the process of my own experience and my own reflection and being affected by outside influences, experience, just kind of taking in the whole world around me and trying to make sense of it instead of just formulating a basis to believe because it fit the situation that I lived in. I came from a home where by the start of the 2000s, it was a fairly conservative home. I'll call it a conservative home. I don't know if I'd call it a Republican home necessarily. My mom used to be very liberal. My dad's always been kind of middle of the road. He has these very old school Republican beliefs, but then also believes in environmental protection and things like that. I'd say he's 60% conservative, 40% liberal, just depending on what situation it is. And that's the world I grew up in. It was a conservative world, and it was almost like I was trying to appease my parents by having the perspectives I did, because if I gave them a kind of conservative perspective from me, it was like, oh, you know what, I'm glad you think that way, or so impressed with your way of putting things together and breaking things down. You're such a smart kid, Steve. And book-wise, sure, but in terms of morality, I really wasn't there, which was it was such a strange dichotomy, because I was considered such a nice person, and I was always nice to everybody, no matter what, in person. But then, you don't support gay marriage, which obviously you're not being nice to people, and that, very much against abortion. Same thing. So your belief structure is not all-encompassing in terms of everybody getting a fair shake, but you're treated like you're a really nice guy, and so you think I must be doing something right. And it was just getting older, getting more intelligent, taking in the world around me, that began shifting me. And around the time I was 24, 25, I definitely started shifting, and I was kind of in this middle ground, and I've just been moving more and more left over time. And the thing about being a Republican with those beliefs, at least in the way that I had them and was feeling, because I look back now and I'm like, what was it that really inspired me to think the way that I did, to have the beliefs that I had? Still, I don't know how real any of it truly was. And it gets down to a point of fear, really. You're afraid of everything. And it's very hypocritical, because you constantly feel like someone is trying to take something away from you, while at the same time you never feel like you're taking something away from anybody else. So let's take the gay marriage situation. 2004, there were two different measures put on the 2004 ballot in regards to legalizing gay marriage, and it failed. Even in Oregon, it failed. People as a whole, they just weren't ready to take that step. I really don't know. Like back at the time, I thought that didn't surprise me, but now I'm really surprised that Oregon couldn't pass that. And I voted no, like not legalizing gay marriage. I did it without a second thought, and I did it because I didn't so much feel threatened by the idea of gay people getting married, which makes no sense any way you try to figure it. But it was this idea that marriage had always been a man and a woman, and by keeping it that way, keeping it sacred as it's always been, or what have you, I wasn't, no gay couple was going to die if they weren't allowed to get married the same way that a man and woman were. So I felt like I'm not really a bad guy for voting no against this. I'm not condemning you to death by not supporting this. That was very much the mindset that I and probably a lot of other people were in. It was this idea that we're not really taking anything away from you. I'm not harming you. At least that's what I was thinking. And of course, ignoring the very obvious fact that who am I to tell somebody else that they're not allowed to have that which I'm allowed to have? It's very easy. And see, the time in which I started shifting away from my Republican sentiment was right around the same time that I left home. So while I was a homebody and had a roof over my head and didn't have to pay for rent and didn't have to worry about paying a lot for college, didn't really have to worry about health care, when I didn't have to worry about taking care of these things personally myself, it was real easy to say, oh, well, you need to pay for college, or to be against universal health care. Well, if you want health care, you need to earn it, and earning it means you need to go out and get a job. Completely ignoring the fact that some people have disabilities which restrict what jobs they can do if they can work at all. People that have, a variety of potential, again, physical and mental disabilities. There's a lot of factors that play in, and there's no black and white solution for this stuff, and that's what you try to push forward when I was in that Republican frame of mind. Is there's always just one answer, and it's always you have to earn it or you don't get it. And I to this day do not understand how, with my capacity for intelligence, how I thought that way. In hindsight. But, it's real easy, it's easy to avoid that hypocrisy problem when, you don't want to support universal health care. That's too crazy. But then you don't have to personally worry about it, so I'm not that guy out there who's knows he really needs universal health care. I don't make enough money, I'm struggling to get by, I need health care, and I can only get it through means such as that, affordable health care at least. And then at the same time, I'm anti-affordable health care, so there's that hypocrisy. I'm in desperate need of it, but I'm denying it because it goes against those beliefs, and I can't break free of those beliefs because they're my beliefs, and you can't. And that's just one of the things you have to face in life. Every human being needs to stop and disassociate from themselves the best they can, and to start analyzing. Even if your beliefs are in a good place, everybody needs to stop. Just stop every so often and analyze everything you believe, all the things that you think are proper actions, things that are right, And that's really how I began to change. Nobody had to put me against a wall and say, Steve, your perspectives on everything are screwed up. I just started analyzing things. Like one of the weird things is when I actually started going to church and becoming more directly religious, I started becoming more liberal, which is weird. You'd think it would go the other way. I remember, again, that gay marriage thing, gay rights, as it was. Now it's, LGBT rights. We've expanded, at least somewhat, in our understanding since the early 2000s, when it was just straight gay was the argument. And in relation to that, before any other real social issue, beyond it, gay rights was the first one that really started eating at me. Because you've taught yourself and you've pushed yourself to be against that, in certain respects, like gay marriage. And it started being like, first it was just what I generally felt I believed, and then I started feeling myself having to force myself to continue believing it. And that's when you know something is amiss, is when you're having to push yourself to you're trying to hold on to something that maybe you need to let go. And I started analyzing, because I thought, in the church they say, leading the gay lifestyle is evil, and it's a sin, banish yourself to hell. And this is about 2009, 2010. I'm like, again, this is when I'm starting to shift a little bit. And I remember thinking, okay, let's look at it in terms of the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments are like these 10 universal laws that you follow in the church. And even if you look at them independently of religion, and then you take some out that are specifically religious, like thou shalt not follow any gods before me, or other than me. See, I don't even freaking know them that well. Some Christian I turned out to be. But if you go through each of them, the ones that address just how to live your life one by one, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, you can look and go down the line on all those, and you can realize logically within 1 second why those are there, why you shouldn't do those things. So I thought, okay, what if I add an 11th commandment, thou shalt not be gay? Because if that's evil, and I was able to figure out real quick that all these other things that are supposedly evil, killing, stealing, so on and so forth, then it should only take me a second to realize why homosexuality is wrong, objectively. And I, to this day, do not have an answer for that. I do not have an answer other than the classic, well, because God said so. Other than that argument, which is always just, you always have it in the back of your pocket to go to. It's not really a genuine argument. To this day, fortunately, I stopped trying to answer the question a long time ago. Why is homosexuality evil? Yeah. And that completely flipped me. I was like, there's nothing there. It's just people who were born a notch differently than me. And then you fast forward ahead, 2011, 2012, 2013, when I went back to college. I remember one day I was sitting at a table with my 5 closest friends at college, and I was the only straight person at the table. And we'd been sitting and talking for about 30 seconds, and then all of a sudden I made that connection as I looked around. And that just kind of came out of nowhere. Like, I knew my perspectives were changing. But I turned so much that I stopped even really noticing that every friend I had while I was going to college was either gay or bi. And that felt good. To know that I had shifted so much, wasn't pushing away people that were like that, but I had changed. and I felt good inside. I felt like a better person inside because now I wasn't pushing people away when they wanted what I wanted. I wasn't supporting the American ideal of everybody should be equal until that equality gets annoying to me, I guess. So that was where it really changed. And the fact of the matter is, the most important thing to me is that people don't suffer. I turn into a child when I get the flu. I have always been fearful that of the idea of ending up homeless one day. That has always been something that's frightened me. And yet, these correlate to things that are very real in our world. Ending up homeless on the streets, either because you have drug addictions or some medical thing that you can't get addressed properly because you don't have health care or money, and nobody out there wants to help you, or just having a medical issue in general and not being able to go see someone about it until it becomes too serious. How many people have not had health insurance and they start having a bug that's bothering them, and then finally it gets uber serious, they go and check it out and find out they have cancer? That's not right. That is the civilization we live in, where people on this planet have to, or I guess I'll try to focus it more just to our country, since I am talking about American politics mostly. If we have the ability to do it, we should do everything possible to make sure that everyone in our society is well taken care of. If someone needs health care, desperately needs health care, whether they have a good job or not should not make any difference. Whether they have money or family influence that can help them should not make a difference. Everybody should be given the opportunity, whether they seize it or not, to have an education in this country. If society is going to tell us now that we have to have a college degree, I mean, it's not even just a bachelor's degree now, it's like you gotta have a master's in lots of cases. If society is going to tell us you have to have a degree in college, then society needs to give us the opportunity to get that necessary education without putting us into debt, without putting us into a situation where we could default and end up having our credit go in the toilet, creating a scenario where we can't buy a house, we can't rent an apartment, we can't get a car, we can't do all these things that people shouldn't be denied of just because the system is messed up. And I never believed in climate change when I was a Republican. Not so much that I didn't think it was a possibility, as much as it was just too frightening of a thing to conceive. But this is our planet. This is what we have. We can say all we want about how someday technology is going to take us to another planet to inhabit, but as it stands right now, that is not a reality. This is what we have. And we should be doing everything in our power to protect that, because without the world, there is no us anymore. I refuse to have a child now. I'm at a point in my life, I'm in my 30s, I finally settled down with the right girl. I have so much to do in my life, and I really don't want children, to be honest. But if I did, I still wouldn't have any children, because I'm like, how much longer? I'm going to give birth to a child and bring them into a world where they'll be lucky if they can get a decent job after going to college and hopefully pay off their tuition. Hopefully the world lasts long enough that they can live a fraction of a full life. It just drives me crazy how the old adage, that parents still say it today, parents always say to their kids, we want you to have a better life than we did. That's what means the world to us. It means more to us than anything, is we want you to have a better life than we did. And it's like, well, then why do you keep electing people to office that don't do anything about the cost of education? if you want me to have a better life than you did, why are you voting for people that are actively going to force me to go into massive debt? And then after college, go out and do an economy where there's no guarantee I'm going to find a job that makes me enough money to pay all that off in a short period of time, because you're paying interest. So, you're not taking out 5,000 and just paying back 5,000, You're paying back more and more and more with every payment. Why are we constantly electing people, Republican and Democrat, who either flat out won't consider the idea of universal education or a world where we can all get the medical care we need regardless of where we stand? If you want a world so much better for your children, why are we constantly electing Republicans who won't even discuss it, and Democrats who always say, universal health care is such a nice idea, too bad it can't happen, when it's been shown statistically it would be cheaper than our current system? So why hasn't our system been changed since yesterday? But no, we keep voting for people that won't make for universal health care, which means when your children go out in the world, and I'm meaning you figuratively, universally, and there's no guarantee what life they got ahead of them. What's going to happen if they're flat broke for part of their existence and they get sick and they can't get the medical care they need? Yeah, a great world we're setting up our children for. A great world my parents' generation set us up for. Now millennials are, you're lucky if you're actually even able to make payments on your student loans, if you even have an apartment to live in, and you're not doing what I'm doing right now, which I'm grateful for the living situation that I have. But right now, I'm 33 years old and I'm living in my girlfriend's parents' basement with her. I mean, we rent it, we pay for it, but we can't even come close to renting out our own apartment. Not in Portland, where I live. Good God. And I, like a lot of millennials, bust my ass. The average workday, I walk 13 to 15 miles a day. I come home, I can barely walk when I get home. Just doing the daily grind, and then I come home and I do stuff for YouTube, and I'm a filmmaker. I literally work 2 jobs, essentially, between my day job and my video film job. So, I put in 70, 80 hours a week. And it's exhausting, but I'm not going to stand here and say that because I'm the age I am, or because I make the minuscule amount of money that I have, that so-and-so over here is better than me because they make more money and therefore they're more entitled to it. If you honestly believe that you have to do something special, like have a good job, in order to be justified in receiving health care to preserve your life, you are not a decent human being. You're not. And that's not an opinion. That's a straight fact. We have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If we have the right to life, then that means we have the right to have our life protected, meaning when we need the medical care that is necessary to protect our life, to keep our life going, we need to be able to pursue it without worrying about going into bankruptcy because we went in for a checkup. And I never would have thought this way 20 years ago. It was survival of the fittest. If you want a good life, you have to go out and make it happen. The American dream. It was real easy to support the American dream when I didn't have to go out in the real world and take care of myself in it. And to experience the realities of the world around us, the darkness in the world around us that we have to fight and keep pushing back against every day. And we can't give up. If you give up, then it's over. And you can't complain anymore. You can't bitch about the state of the world if you're just gonna quit fighting. So no matter how hard it gets, you have to keep going at it. And you have to maintain a moral compass that everybody on this planet should matter to you to some degree or another, even though most of them are strangers. I've been poor my whole life. If I'm working a pretty good job, if I'm making even like, I don't know, 60, 70K a year, I'd be more than happy to pay an extra chunk in taxes, just having that come out of my money. If it means everybody can have health care, if it means everybody can have what they need. And that's why I don't understand why that's such a hard concept to grasp, that people who make more money should have to pay more in taxes. You have a very luxurious life and this adversely affects that? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that people are going to die if we don't get a new system in place, that you may have to pay an extra couple of what is essentially pennies to you compared to dollars to someone like me. I would gladly fork up the extra money to see to it that what needs to be addressed and fixed is done, and is done in a timely manner, so we don't keep going down that black hole, And there's no politician out there really right now that has the record, has the history of saying the same thing and fighting for the same thing for decades than Bernie Sanders, senator from Vermont. And I always hoped against hope after 2016 and the minutia, the drama, the pain of having to go through that and all the crookedness that you knew was going on behind closed doors. And I just hoped against hope that Bernie would run again in 2020. No matter what the circumstances are, I was really hoping. And, here we are. He's in there. He's in the fight. And every other day it seems a new candidate is popping up that they're trying to say is just like Bernie, and then you take 15 minutes of research and find out this guy's a plant. This person's a fake. This person isn't another Bernie. They just are sticking someone in there and saying, hey, here's another Bernie. Give them a chance so that you won't vote for Bernie and you'll vote for someone who's just another establishment piece of shit. I want Trump out of office, but I don't want to just accept any random son of a bitch just because they're a little less worse than he is. I want somebody who's actually going to start pushing and trying to enforce and act real change against the odds, against the power elite, against the people who are the true evil in this country. The people who not only are going to prevent you from getting an affordable education, stop climate change, to get affordable health care, and of course that's just a small fraction of all the problems we have to deal with. They not only aren't going to do anything to bring about those changes, they don't care. They don't care whether you live or die. They don't care whether I live or die. The only person that I genuinely look at and think, I feel like he's actually thinking about me. Bernie Sanders probably doesn't even know I exist. He just knows there's a lot of people out there that support him. But he's the only one that I almost feel like in his core, like I don't know, it's weird, it's spiritual, I guess, but I feel that connection to him, like he's actually thinking about me and all those like me who are struggling to get by and being told that the reason we're struggling to get by is we don't work hard enough, we don't give enough, we complain too much, this or that. I don't complain half as much as every baby boomer or Generation Xer I've ever encountered in my life. Everybody I've encountered who's, 50s and they're in their 50s and 60s now, all they do is complain about their lives. And then accuse you of complaining about your life when you're just sitting there being quiet. Ow. So, a lot needs to change, and it's time to cut the shit, and it's time for people to actually have their eyes open. I'm glad, if it was one positive thing to take away from the Trump presidency, is that it scared some of us back into consciousness. 2018, the midterm elections, there was a lot of people voting. They came out in droves. I only wish it didn't take our current drastic circumstances the way they are now to get people to come out and vote in droves like that. When things feel kind of okay, everybody kind of stays home and forgets to vote. But then when desperate times come, all of a sudden everybody's pushing everybody to vote. We need to vote regardless. And I don't, necessarily trust our election system that much. I don't trust that every vote is counted or that fake votes aren't getting put in. in certain circumstances, but we need to do it anyway. So yeah, it's time to see through the obvious insanity. Why is it that we have how many Democrats with their hat in the ring now? And not one of them gets really any criticism, but Bernie Sanders gets criticized on a daily basis. Isn't it interesting that everybody is focusing all their hostility on one guy? It's almost like he's a threat to them. It's almost like he's a threat to the way things are functioning, and things are not functioning very fucking well right now. So isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting that Anastasia Ocasio-Cortez gets so much more press, negative press, than a lot of people working her same job? Because she's, very comparable to Bernie. And she's young. And she's a woman. So, of course, the sexism and the, ignorant comments from an older generation that sat on their ass while we've descended down this avalanche of horseshit. She's a convenient target for them. Why is she get so much criticism all the time when others don't? Why is Bernie Sanders constantly just getting poked in the face? Every single day there's some smear article written about him or some news report. Someone coming out and saying this about Bernie, that about Bernie, and it's all just this chicken shit, cockamamie, childish nonsense because they can't actually get something real and tangible and evil about the guy because he just isn't. Bernie Sanders did himself a lot of favors by being a genuinely good person with true, honest to his core, structured moral beliefs that following his rule of thumb, we're looking at a much better future than we've had any time really since my childhood. So it's almost a no-brainer at this point who should be and who needs to be elected president in 2020. I really don't know what to think otherwise. I want Trump out, but I'm not going to be elated if some establishment Democrat gets in there and universal health care keeps getting pushed aside. I don't think everything Bernie wants to implement is going to happen, but at least he's going to be in there trying to make it happen. He's going to be trying to fulfill his promises. When was the last time a presidential candidate or a presidential elect did that? It's been a very long time. And that's why I am a former Republican who's a supporter of Bernie Sanders now. See you guys later.